Hello, everybody. My name is Lynnis Woods-Mullins, and I am a holistic living and wellness expert for women over 40. For those of you who are here right now, welcome. I'm so glad that you are here. I'm going to be talking about a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and that is the whole idea of maintaining our mental health and our resiliency as we age. The reason why this is so important to me is that I lost my mental health when I entered in my 50s. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and didn't have a clue on how to cure myself and didn't have a clue about all the different things I could have done to prevent the anxiety disorder. I was on medication for a while, and it was through the medication that I learned that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life on medication. So I began to come up with a plan on how I could deliver myself from the anxiety and the other mental health issues that I had without using the pharmaceuticals. It was quite a journey. And what I'm going to be talking about today are some of the things I learned along my journey. One of the things I learned was that I really didn't want to go back to corporate America. So I went ahead and took that leap and left corporate America and took a year to basically get in control of my anxiety and my borderline depression through using holistic practices and the other methods, some of which I will share with you today. The end result is that, almost 16 years later, I am so happy to say that I don't have any depression and my anxiety is under control. I still have it from time to time, but at least I have a toolkit to know what it is that I need to do. And I'm going to be sharing some of those with you today. This particular course, the Mind Over Midlife Strategies for Resilience and Enhancing Your Mental Health, really does come from my expertise in dealing with not just the emotional issues or emotional wellness, but also the physical things that you need to be doing. They're all like building blocks. They're all building blocks. One is not more important than the other. And what I like to do with my clients is to really take them on a journey where they are addressing the needs of their mind, their body, and their spirit in order to experience total and complete mental health. And it absolutely is possible. And it's absolutely important to do so, especially during midlife. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and start a slide presentation. It's not a lot of slides, but it's just something to help with talking points and hopefully help with you when it comes to taking notes. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. Okay, here we go. All right. I think you can see a lady there with her arms up. Okay. Mind over midlife strategies to build resilience and mental strength. And as I told you before, the reason why this was so important to me and why I have made this my goal over all of 2023 is to talk about stress, anxiety, and depression and how it seems to exacerbate over midlife. And so what we're going to talk about today are a few of the strategies that I have used and that I have used with my clients to help you with this. So, I guess the first question I always ask is how do you define midlife? The definition of midlife for women can vary depending on the source, but it generally refers to the period between, early adulthood and older age, typically marked by physical and psychological changes. The age range for midlife for women can vary, but most commonly is between the ages of 40 and 65, which means in a couple of weeks or so, I'm going to be too old for midlife. I'll be 66. But that's okay. Because really, it's important to note that everyone's experience of midlife is unique and may not fit within a specific age range. I was happy to report that when I went to my doctor, he said that, in terms of where I am physically and mentally, that I'm more like about 45. And I said, 45? He says, well, that's like 20 years younger than you are. And I said, oh, okay. So it's all relative. And additionally, midlife can be influenced by various factors such as culture and health and life circumstances, which can definitely impact the timing and nature of the changes that are experienced during this period. It's interesting because Nora Ephron, she defines midlife this way: you're not going to be you fixed, immutable you forever. And that's true. The you that you knew when you were 40 is probably a different you than you're going to be at 50. It doesn't have to be a worse you, just a different you. The thing I love about midlife is that it's ever evolving, and we have a tendency to show up more for ourselves in midlife than we do when we're younger. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And we're going to talk about that real quickly, too. And also, the next thing is that what Brene Brown, she says that midlife, when the universe grabs you by the shoulder and tells you, I'm not effing around, use the gifts you were given. Oh, I love that quote. And that's what I feel like God said to me when I was in my 50s. He said, look, you need to leave that corporate job and exercise all the gifts, talents, and abilities that I have given you, because you're not using it all. And that's one of the reasons why you feel like you're going crazy. Plus the fact that I had menopausal anxiety, post-traumatic stress. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why I had the anxiety that I had. But because I wasn't tuned in to what was going on with me, I was just pushing back those feelings and not addressing them. They ended up accumulating to an event that almost took me out of here. So, what we're discussing today is super important. And I'm so glad that you took the time to sign up for this masterclass, because that means you're well on your way to taking control of whatever it is that you're concerned about and finding some solutions that could work for you. So, what happens to us in midlife? There's a whole bunch of stuff. It's so much shit, as they would say. Pardon the language, but let's face it, midlife is loaded with all kinds of dips and turns and detours and frustrations. From a psychological perspective, there is much. It's like a domino effect, Declining estrogen and progesterone can lead to sleeplessness, which can lead to low energy, memory loss, mood swings, anxiety, weight gain, and difficulty concentrating. And then there are the emotional challenges. Kids are growing up, and in many cases, the empty nest syndrome pops up and your self confidence begins to slip. And many of these things I found were going on with me about 16 years ago when I was in the throes of beginning to get diagnosed with my anxiety. There's also the idea of your relationships changing, death and grief happen a lot, and age discrimination is another thing that can happen. And all the things I've listed here, they're all things that could happen to you in midlife. And that's a lot. And when you take a look at this compared to what could happen to you like in your 30s, it's not that those things don't happen, but almost guaranteed it's going to happen on an ongoing basis in midlife. Your declining estrogen and progesterone, your sleeplessness, your mood swings, your low energy, your memory loss, your anxiety, your weight gain, and your difficulty concentrating. That's a good possibility that's going to happen after 40. From an emotional perspective, your empty nest syndrome, your self-confidence slips, your imposter syndrome rears its ugly head more often than it used to, perhaps. Loss of fertility definitely is something that you deal with in midlife. Changes in relationships, your marriage relationship, your bestie girlfriend relationship, people at work, sometimes that changes. Significant change in your identity in terms of how you see yourself, death and grief, as I mentioned, and also age discrimination. All of these could happen in midlife, and all of these could take a toll. So the question is, what can you do to kind of muddle through this? What can you do to be resilient when these things happen? What can you do to maintain your mental strength? And while the things I'm going to be talking about are not necessarily new information, the whole idea is to not just get the information, but then to have the motivation to act on it and to implement your strategy that's going to help you when it comes to your overall ability to be resilient and mentally healthy. So with that, let's take a look at what kinds of things need to be incorporated in your resilience and your mental strength. Okay. Mindfulness is extremely important. We want to practice mindfulness. And mindfulness practices are things like, meditation, yoga, deep breathing exercises can help women over 40 manage stress and enhance their mental strength. So we're going to talk about mindfulness. We're also going to talk about sleep. I cannot tell you enough how important sleep is. Getting adequate sleep is essential for maintaining good physical and mental health. Women over 40 should aim for 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night, but it also depends on you. For me, I get up at 3 a.m. every morning, but I do go to bed like around 7 or 8. That's just how I'm rigged. Ever since I started my business 16 years ago, that's kind of how I've been rolling. The only thing was I became sleep deprived because I was like getting up at 3 or 4 and then working till 10 o'clock at night. That's ridiculous. So now I go to bed earlier and I adjust my social activities. If I know I have something to do at 7 p.m. that night, then I might wake up at 3 o'clock, but I'm not going to get up. I'm going to try to go back to sleep for another couple of hours because I know I'm going to be going on till 7, or I'm going to take a nap. Nothing wrong with taking a nap. If you can do it, you should absolutely do it. The other thing you want to think about, or the other thing that happens a lot to us in midlife, is movement. We want to be able to move more. That can help us with our resilience and strength. And we'll talk more about that today. Movement is key. And the reason why it's so important is that it has everything to do with what our um, hormonal levels are doing, the chemicals in our brain and how they're functioning. Also, the need for us to um, exercise and move our bodies because we were not created as stick figures. We have joints, which means we're supposed to move, and that's supposed to be a natural thing. But what happens after 40, we have a tendency to be more sedentary, sitting more. The exercise we might get is our button on the change channel for Netflix or whatever we're binge watching. You have a tendency to do that more, slow down more. But actually, in midlife, for your resilience and mental strength, you want to be actually moving more than you used to. Maybe not in the same intensity, but definitely something that is a regular goal on your list of things to do. You also want to make sure that you're having a balanced diet. We're going to be talking about that and the things that you need to do to make sure that you are eating healthy, that you are meal planning and have an awareness of what's important for you. By eating a balanced diet, that includes, plenty of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and lean protein, healthy fats, which is extremely important for women over 40. And eating well can also help reduce the risk of chronic disease, heart disease, diabetes, and cancer, not to mention any mental illness that can come as a result of not eating right. Absolutely, that can happen. We're also going to talk about social connections, the importance of connecting with others. Social support is so important for mental and emotional health, especially for women over 40. We should make an effort to connect with our friends, our family, and community. And I think we learned about the importance of social connections during the pandemic. So we are going to cover that as well. And positive growth mindset. How do you maintain that positive mindset? Not necessarily being in denial about how crazy the world is right now, but being positive in terms of how you approach each day. How do you go about doing that? Because that's definitely something that's important when it comes to your resilience and your mental health. The other thing is managing your stress. Now, that's a huge proponent for me because I know what it feels like when you don't manage the stress, because it almost took me out of here so many years ago when I was so totally stressed out. So we're going to talk about that because that too is important for resilience and also your mental strength. And finally, self-care, which is a plethora of things, some of which I will cover about things you can do from a self-care perspective that are going to help you increase your resilience and your mental strength. Also, we're going to talk about taking action. As I mentioned before, it's one thing to get all this great knowledge, but how do you go about implementing the knowledge and taking action? And finally, seeking support. Where is the support? What kind of support do you need? Making those determinations and then acting on getting the support is key towards maintaining your resilience and mental strength. So, let's talk about mindfulness. Today, we're going to talk about two things. We're going to talk about mindfulness and we're going to talk about movement. Okay. And I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but these master classes are a series of master classes that are every Wednesday until the end of the month. And I know there will be some of you who might be watching this after. The series is over, which is great. But we're going to be taking things in chunks because it's impossible to do all of this in an hour. So, first of all, we'll talk about mindfulness. It's interesting. It all starts with the breath, believe it or not. I have a breathing coach who has subscribed certain things for me to do to help me with my breath, because breath really can be the beginning of your mindful practice. By focusing on the breath, you can begin to kind of slow things down a little bit. And I'll give you one exercise that you can do that can be very helpful for you. You want to be able to take about 10 minutes of your day, just 10 minutes. And you can do this. We could spend 10 minutes talking to our girlfriends. So that 10 minutes, if you might talk to your girlfriends, call her later and do this. You take 10 minutes, and what you're going to do is first you're going to take just some deep breaths, maybe about 3 or 4 deep breaths. So through your mouth, blow out through your mouth, take it in. And then for 10 minutes, after you've done your 4 deep breaths, you're going to do a breathing in for 7 seconds through your nose. And then you're going to hold it for 4 seconds. And then breathe through your nose for 9 seconds. Now, when I was working on that, it took me a while to get to the breathing for 9 seconds, but it's amazing how you begin to focus on this. So focus on breathing in for 7 seconds through your nose, and then holding it for 4 seconds, and then breathe out through your nose for 9 seconds. Continue doing that for 10 minutes, and you'll be surprised at how much more aware you are of what's going on in your life. You're more aware of how you're feeling. You're beginning to slow yourself down a little bit. Those racing voices in your head are probably gone, and you're much more clear on what it is that you're wanting to think about. Now, whatever mindfulness practice you have, and there are many of them, you want to make sure you practice them regularly. Work them into your regime, starting with the breath. If you can work in that, that was just one breath exercise. There's many others that I teach, but if you first focus in on putting in a breath exercise, if that's what you decide you're going to do, then practice it regularly. And don't be so vested in the outcome. Okay, if I do this, I'm going to feel really great later on. Just remember that just like anything in life, when it comes to the human condition, it's usually the accumulation of occurrences that gets you to a certain point. So if you're working on mindfulness, it's going to be an accumulation of things that you do over time that's going to make the difference, that's going to improve your mindfulness. So take one day at a time, and make sure you congratulate yourself anytime you accomplish any of the things on your to-do list when it comes to maintaining your mental health and your resilience. And for this one, mindfulness, you want to start with the breath if you can, practice regularly, and be non-judgmental. We can be so hard on ourselves. So when you are doing a mindfulness practice, just try to observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment or attachment, okay? This can really help you develop a more compassionate and accepting attitude towards yourself and others. So when you are doing the practice, whatever that is, do not get judgmental on yourself because you have voices that are coming in a little bit, or you're not feeling like you did it right or whatever. Just the fact that you're doing it is a major step when it comes to being mindful. You can practice gratitude, which is huge, and it's something that I do often. Cultivating gratitude by taking time each day to reflect on the things in your life that you're grateful for. I mean, this could be a huge help when it comes to focusing on the positive aspects of your life and developing a more positive outlook. Also, mindful eating. I know that sounds crazy, but think about it. How many times, and I'm guilty of this, are you eating and reading, or eating and watching TV, or eating and talking, eating and on the phone, eating and, doing this with your phone? Well, what about if you were just to eat and focus on the chewing, focus on the smells, focus on the texture, focus on how it feels when you swallow and that nutrient is going down into through your body into the stomach and ultimately being digested. What about that? Try mindful eating. That's another way to practice mindfulness. Another thing is mindful movement. Incorporating mindfulness into your movement practice by focusing on the sensations of the body as you move. And this is easy to do when you're walking, for instance, or when you're doing yoga. That's a very great mindful movement. Any low impact, for instance, swimming is a great mindful movement. It's low impact, it involves movement, and it's a great way to kind of let yourself go and just let your mind go as you're going, as your arms are, going through the water and your legs are kicking. You're being mindful of how the water feels, how your legs feel, how your arms feel as you're treading the water with your arms in your hands. Be mindful of that. We have a tendency to go into automatic a lot of the time, and we don't always need to do that. Sometimes we need to just be more present in what it is that we're doing. Not being present does cause a plethora of issues, and one of them is frustration. Feeling a lack of control. Also, it can cause more anxiety. It can cause more sleeplessness. So, practicing mindfulness and stopping and just being present and focusing on some of the things that we talked about can go a long way when it comes to being more resilient in your mental health. Just remember that it's a practice. It may take time and effort, as I mentioned, to see the results. So, incorporating some of these tips on a daily basis will eventually help you to build that mental strength and resilience and change your overall well being. So, with that, we're going to go to the next one that we're going to talk about today, and that is movement. Um, Movement is important. And I call it movement rather than exercise because some people get really turned off at the idea of exercise. But, movement is exercise, really. And movement can be a powerful tool for improving your mental strength and resilience. Here are a few tips that you can that you can do to help improve your mental strength and your resilience. First of all, you want to make sure whatever you decide to do, that is regular movement, something that you do maybe every day or every other day, whatever the routine is, you want to stick to it as much as possible. I love outdoor activities. So walking is my go-to. I didn't used to walk when I was younger because that never even occurred to me because I was taking dance lessons and I was a dancer. So, that was my form of movement. And for many, many years, when I got 62, I stopped dancing professionally in public. And that's when I took up walking. And I can tell you that being outdoors is a wonderful way to connect your soul and your mind and your body with nature. It's a wonderful way to connect with your essence. And you are exercising so many parts of your body, your arms, your legs, your thighs, your buttocks, your center, your core is being exercised, your feet. I mean, everything gets movement, it gets exercise. And trying to do it, maybe you can do it 30 minutes a day, or you can do it 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, just as long as you're moving. I know that a lot of the experts recommend that you do 10,000 steps a day. Well, I'm going to tell you about that. If you can do that, that's fantastic, but don't stress yourself out over that. Some movement is better than no movement. Maybe you set a goal maybe for 5,000 steps a day and you grow from there. But just as long as you're doing regular movement, and if you can do it outdoors, that's fantastic. Now, intensity interval training, I love that because can really help to improve your mental strength and resiliency because it challenges you both physically and mentally. And basically, high intensity interval training involves short bursts of intense activity followed by periods of rest and low intense activity. And what I do for my clients is I create these interval training modules for them. I mean, an example would be, let's see, for doing jumping jacks, okay, for maybe a minute, 60 seconds, or maybe it's 25 jumping jacks. And then doing some squats, maybe 25 squats or whatever. And then maybe doing some push ups, maybe 10 push ups, and then stopping for a couple of minutes or so and resting. And then going back and doing that same routine or a different routine. You can get in shape faster by working out that way. It has a tendency to be lower impact. And believe it or not, you can lose weight in inches as a result of that because of how our body works as we get older. There are a lot of trainers out there who have a tendency to train women over 40 the same way they would train a woman who was 20. But what changes is that we have to be careful about going hard and doing that really in depth, high physical training, because that can raise our cortisol levels. And that will give us opposite results of what we're wanting. But high intensity training or high intensity interval training is one way to get the cardio, but to do it in a way where you're not putting yourself in danger of raising cortisol levels or, quite frankly, hurting yourself. So the other thing is dancing. Dancing, I love dancing. I love the movement. I love it because you're dancing, you have the music going too, and the music can minister to you as well in terms of just lifting your mood because music is high vibrationally. It's over 500 hertz all the time, and that's where you want to be anyway. So listening to music almost automatically raises your vibration, helps you to feel better and to stay in that zone of feeling good. So dancing is definitely a fun thing to do. Group exercise. Now I'm calling it group exercise rather than group movement because you do, get together and you exercise together, but you support each other. You uplift each other, you challenge each other, you have fun doing it. And the other one is low impact movement. Low impact movement can be things like yoga or swimming or walking, any of the things that don't require going hard. Another low impact would be bowling, for instance. Yeah, you're picking up a little bit of weight training, you're picking up the ball, you're, throwing it down, thing, walking a few steps, but that's considered low impact as well. One thing that I don't have on here that I should have on here is strength training as well. Strength training is important because not only does it get you moving, but it also burns fat. When you are doing strength training, you will begin to burn fat even when you sleep, when you're not strength training. That's just how the body responds to strength training. Strength training after 50 in particular is an integral part of your physical health and your mental health. So those are the things I think that are really important. You want to make sure that you um, make mindfulness a part of your daily routine. You can start with the breath. You can practice that regularly. Be non-judgmental when you're practicing mindfulness. Make sure you're practicing gratitude, practice mindful eating, and practice mindful movement. All of these things can add up to helping you to be more emotionally and mentally resilient. And also as movement we just got through talking about, making sure that it's regular. Doing an outdoor activity is fantastic, or high intensity interval training is a fun way to get in shape and to also drive down those cortisol levels and to kind of uplift your mental spirits. Dancing, the music in combination with movement is just a great cure all for lifting your spirits and keeping them there. Group exercise, you feed off each other, you support each other, you exercise together, uplift and encourage and motivate and inspire each other. And low impact movement like swimming or walking or bowling or things that aren't going hard cardio. And the one thing I didn't add that I want to talk about now is the strength training. Every woman should have strength training on her list of things they need to do, especially after 40. I cannot tell you how important that is for your bone density strength and for your ability to still have an active life long after the kids are gone, and and you've got grandkids. You want to be able to pick them up, want to be able to play with them like you maybe always wanted to but couldn't because of your schedule when you were raising your kids. Doing these kinds of things, the things that we just got through talking about, the movement and the mindfulness, are two of the integral steps of increasing your resiliency and your strength when it comes to mental health. Now, this would be time for discussions and questions, but I'm going to skip that right now. But I am going to, when you receive this in the email, I'm going to ask you for your questions, and then you can go ahead and email me back with your questions. We're going to go on to talking about what's next. Now, I have this masterclass every Wednesday in May. Okay. And normally the class itself is about 35 minutes. And then we have time for questions and answers and just a discussion on the things that we're doing to build our resilience and mental health. Today, we talked about mindfulness and movement. Next week, we're going to talk about sleep, social connections, and positive growth mindset. Now, as you can see, all the topics that you see in the bulleted section there, those are all the things we're going to cover in these master classes. In total, there's a total of 4 master classes. So today we talked about mindfulness and movement. The next one, we're going to talk about sleep, social connections, and positive growth mindset. I advise all of you that if you're coming live to these classes, make sure you bring with you your questions. And if you are going to be watching these in the replay, you can always email me with questions. When you receive this tape, the email that you receive this tape from is the email that you would use to send me your questions and feedback. I want to know, what kinds of things are you doing to maintain your resiliency? And what have your experiences been in achieving mental strength? And where are you on this? Do you feel you could be better? Do you feel you're right where you need to be? Do you need help? What kinds of things are you doing to take action to make sure that your mind over midlife is being successful? Okay, let's see here. Okay. Thanks so much for signing up for this master class. I'm so excited that you did. I'm looking forward to the next 3 weeks with you, spending time learning more about resiliency and how you can enhance your mental health. It's been wonderful. Oops, what's that? Sorry about that. It's been wonderful talking with you today. I've truly enjoyed it. And I look forward to the next class that we have on Mind Over Midlife Strategies to Build Your Resilience and Your Mental Health. Thanks so much. And I will see you again next time. And don't forget to vibe. Bye bye, everybody.